Hey Adventure, so today is going to be something that think is a little bit half-baked, a little bit not, my thoughts on it aren't fully understood yet, but it's something that I've been thinking about. I recently come across it. So there's been a lot of discussions about book covers recently, especially with like AI art and everything like that, but especially within the self-published community. There was people, I know the self-published fantasy blog off isn't doing book cover contests anymore because of AI art and stuff like that. And so in one of the discords that I'm a part of, they were doing like the discord was judging their own the covers and seeing what they thought of the covers and stuff like that, and picking a winner for themselves, just out of enjoyment, just to do it for fun type thing. And that got me a little bit thinking about what covers I do like and stuff like that. And then I came across a discussion of, well, I commented in that same, happened to be that same discord. We were talking about some book covers, and I was like, I don't really love this one. It doesn't really work for me. I don't really, actually, I was specifically talking about, I believe his name is Jeff Brown, and he's a cover artist. Some of his covers I adore, some of them I really love, and then other ones just don't really work as well for me as book covers. And so people were kind of asking me, well, why is that the case? And I didn't really have a good answer, but I was thinking about it as I went. And then Bookborn did a video. What video was it now? I should figure out what video it was that Bookborn did, because that's kind of important. The art of the fantasy book cover and what it says about our culture. And so I watched that video, great video as all of her videos are, but then I commented on that video, and we were having a little bit of a discussion about it, about how my tastes are different from other artists, from other readers. And this is something that I've actually been noticing and paying attention to for a while now, that I have some interesting choices in book covers. For example, the super fancy edition of Red Rising that just came out, and that everybody's like, oh, this is so pretty, I really love this, and they would get it and put it on their shelves and everything. I don't care for that. I don't care for that art and stuff like that. And so, like, I understand that it's beautiful, and I understand that it's pretty art and stuff like that. And from that side of things, I can appreciate it. But as a book cover, it doesn't particularly work very well for me. And so, and I've been noticing that as I continue going through, looking at book covers and seeing what it is that I like, and as this concept has been building in my mind over the past several months. And I keep looking back to I've really noticed that, like, the classic fantasy covers type thing, when you think of like the 80s or 90s fantasy covers, they're like the Wheel of Time or whatever, they're a very distinct style, and I find that I really like those. Oh, another good example, the old mass market paperback covers of Robin Hobb's Realm of the Elderling series, Assassin's Apprentice, Assassin's Quest, and then Royal Assassin, but also even Ship of Destiny. Those are the only 4 books in the series that I physically own at the moment. I haven't read or listened to any of them yet, but I do plan to soonish, whatever soon is. But I was looking at those covers, and I really like these covers. And it seems that nobody else does. It seems that there's a lot of people who really like very minimalistic covers, or there's so many different styles of book covers, and I look at them and I'm not in love with most of them. There's some covers that I adore. There are some minimalistic covers that I really like the Lord of the Rings covers. Those I think are always fantastic. But that could just be my love of the story. That could just be my love of what those covers are representing, and the fact that they're illustrative rather than actually showing an image of like a scene from a book or something like that. And so there's all these things that have been in my mind and that I've been thinking about, and I don't have a fully formed explanation of what book covers I like and what book covers I don't like. I also don't have a fully formed explanation of why I like those covers. But through the discussions that I was having on the discords, through the discussion that I was having with Bookborn on her video, in the comments of her video there, I have come to some realizations, I guess, and my thoughts have kind of congealed a little bit, enough so that I can talk about them. And so kind of what I want to focus on, what I want to bring out, is my how kind of what I think of book covers and how I view book covers. I've talked before about how I see the world, how I view the world, how my mind works. I haven't gotten super extensive into it, but I've talked about it a little bit. And the thing that I have said is that I view the world through the lens of storytelling. And I'm finding that that's true of my taste in art, my taste in music to some degree, my taste in book covers. But I can look at art, a piece of art, and I can enjoy it or not enjoy it. And a lot of that depends on how much story I see told through that piece of art. And what exactly that means, how exactly that works, I don't know. Because there's some pieces of art that are beautiful, that are very technically artistically well done and whatnot, and I don't love them. I don't particularly think that they're something that like I would want on a wall. However, there's other stories. I think a lot to. I don't know if anybody has seen the videos or images by David M. Bird. He does these images with. He creates these little creatures called beacorns, which are like an acorn being, and he takes pictures with them. And there's a story that goes along with each of those, and I love those. I think that they're fascinating. I think that they're beautiful. Just super cool images, super cool stories that are being told, and it's just an image. Of course, as he's making the videos for them and whatnot, or even if you just see the pictures, there is a little bit of a story that he tells as to go along with it, and so that helps. It's the same thing. I really like the Four Seasons by Vivaldi, but the music score that I own, and I assume it's probably the same for most if not all of the music scores for the Four Seasons. As you're reading through the sheet music, there will be a line that just gives a little hint of what's going on in that moment, what that section of the song is supposed to represent. And since I happen to have the sheet music here right now, I will just kind of read through this. So you just open up to spring, because that's the first one in the book, and it says spring has returned. So you start playing through the songs, and then it gets to the song of the birds, and you continue through. All is gay and the birds sing happily. And then you get down to flowing fountains. Fountains play in the breeze, constantly moving. You get thunder. The skies are dark. Lightning flashes and thunder roars. And you just go through this, and I really want to. Well, here's another one in summer. The shepherd is right to be afraid. The sky flashes and the thunder is awesome. Grain and fruit are destroyed by the storm. There's a couple in winter as well that I want to point out. And there's these little lines like, our teeth chatter with the cold. We pass the day contented by the fireside. Outside it is raining very hard. Then where's the other one? We carefully walk on the ice. We are afraid we may fall. We slip and fall. And then there's falling down in parentheses. We get up and bravely try again. The ice is breaking. The cracks are wide. And so it's just like, as you're playing through the music, there's these motifs, there's these themes in the music that are coming through, that are eliciting these images in your mind as if the story is being told, which is one of the reasons why the Four Seasons by Vivaldi is so enjoyable to me, so impressive to me, is because I really love the story that's being told, that I can see being told through the music. And yeah, so that's kind of an aside that kind of took a little bit of time, longer than I was planning to talk about or anything like that, but it illustrates my point to a degree. And now I will move it back towards book covers and storytelling in that way, and why this conversation is important to me. So while I was talking to Bookborn, one of the things that one of my comments was that as I think about this, I'm realizing that my favorite art and book covers are those that tell a story, which makes perfect sense for me, seeing as I more or less view the world through the lens of storytelling. I'm going to examine this a bit more and see if I can pull together some thoughts. And so really what I came to the understanding of, what I came to the realization of, is that the book covers I really like are book covers that tell a story in and of themselves. And most book covers do to some degree or another, but for some reason there's something about certain book covers, certain fantasy book covers, that really tell a story to me, and other ones that don't. And I will go back now to my comment that I was making in the conversation on the Discord about book covers when this question came up and was posed to me. What exactly it is about art, exactly it is about certain book covers that works for me or doesn't work for me, I don't rightly know. I don't entirely know. And why some book covers seem to tell a story to me more than others do, I'm not entirely sure. Kind of one of my first comments. So there was a book cover shared that was done by Jeff Brown, and I said it might be maybe a hot take. As pretty as his art is, I don't care for it a ton as covers. And so people were asking me why that was the case, and I said one of my first response was, I'm not sure. They just don't scream book to me. Some do. The Sapphire Heart, for example, absolutely does. I don't have a reason, or at least I don't know it yet. And then I went and found Bookborn's video and watched that, and my mind started to process, and I started having the conversation with Bookborn in the comments, and it led to this. So I came back and I said, okay, I've been thinking about this since you asked yesterday. But it wasn't until watching Bookborn's video today and have been chatting with her in the comments about it that some of my thoughts have coalesced. It's not completely there yet, but I think it has to do with storytelling. I like art that tells a story. Brown's work that does that to varying degrees. Empire of Dirt and Lies would be about a 5 of 10 on the story that is coming through that art. The Sapphire Heart is closer to an 8 of 10. Looking at another famous illustrator, Michael Whalen, The Way of Kings gives me so much to work with. It's another 8 of 10 story cover. Whereas even within Stormlight, I don't adore all the covers. None of the others tell nearly as much of a story as that first one. But the story that's being told with the art can also vary depending on the subgenre and the title of the book even. I can appreciate things that don't specifically tell so much of a story because of what they represent. A Natural History of Dragons has a very simple cover that is basically an anatomical drawing of a dragon, but it's beautiful, and especially combined with that title. I don't think I'm fully making sense yet, and the thoughts are still developing, but maybe that's at least a little bit more of an answer than what I gave previously. The story that the cover tells may not even be the story contained therein, but still it causes my mind to imagine. And I think that's the crux of it right there for me, is that I imagine, there's certain covers that make me imagine a story. It doesn't even have to be the story that's being told by those books, but I look at a cover and I see a story. I see a story that could be told with this, and I really like the example of The Way of Kings, the book cover. You see, of course, within the context of the world, you know what's going on. There's these two characters on the Shattered Plains across from each other. You see pieces of the world and stuff like that. But when I look at that cover, I don't first and foremost see The Way of Kings and the story that's being told therein. I see a story of these two knights in this weird environment, this land that's broken, that's cracked, that looks weird, with this strange storm-like thing in the clouds going on in the background. But also I see the sunset, and I see these two knights waving across at each other, and my mind wonders, what is that story going on? What are they waving at each other for? Why is the one saluting the other? And it causes my mind to ask questions and imagine and to wonder what this story is. And of course, I know that story now. I've read The Way of Kings a couple of times, and I really enjoy that book. But there's an immersion, there's an atmosphere to those book covers, and it's not going to be this way with every single book cover. There's not going to be an immersion and an atmosphere with every single book cover, which is why I really like the example of A Natural History of Dragons. This is not a story cover. This is not a cover that tells the story of the book. But combined with the title, A Natural History of Dragons, my brain instantly thinks, okay, this is going to be something that is very scientific, very much focused on research and understanding, very textbooky, and I'm intrigued by that. I love that idea. I love that concept of a in-world scientist science book, textbook that you sit down and read to learn about the anatomy and the history of this draconic species. And that fascinated me, that book cover and that title, and so titles absolutely play a part in it for sure. But the image that I came up with neither Way of Kings nor A Natural History of Dragons, neither of those covers, the image that was evoked when I saw those covers is not the story. The story that I imagined when I saw those covers is not the same story that's contained therein. However, I love both of those covers because of the story that I see when I look at those covers. And there's so many other examples of beautiful covers that I really adore. The Sum of All Men, which is book 1 of the Rune Lords, is a great example. Or I think it's book 3, which is Wizardborn. That's another book cover that I absolutely love. In that same series, I've already mentioned Lord of the Rings, but that's more of, I think, because it harkens back a lot to the older styles of book covers where it was often just a piece of leather. Maybe there was some stitching or some stamp that was into the cover and it wasn't really like an illustration or an image of something to see and to think about. But I also think about the book covers that I first read Lord of the Rings by, which I don't have them at hand at the moment, and so I'm not going to show them off. I'll show pictures of all the covers rather that I'm talking about, rather than hold books up. you'll be able to see the covers better and more clearly that way for sure. But these ones tell the story. These ones give me an idea. They pull me in, they draw me in, especially I think back to the Two Towers. Oh, I think honestly, the my editions of Lord of the Rings, I've got several different editions of Lord of the Rings that are my own, but one of the ones that I have is a 3-box set, and it creates this mural, this beautiful Alan Lee mural that he drew for Lord of the Rings, and between the three images, between the three books, it creates this mural, and it's just beautiful, and it draws me into that story. The original covers that I read, or the covers that I read the first time that the covers on the books that I read the first time I read Lord of the Rings are the same thing, and I constantly remember this image. I believe it was also by Alan Lee, of Orthanc, and you don't even see Orthanc, you just see a piece of it because it goes up off the edge of the book, and it's just this massive tower of black rock, and my mind is, what is going on here? And I just imagine some of the story, and there's so many books like that I just love. The cover art does a whole lot. Cover art is very important to me. Cover art is something that I know we're not supposed to judge a book by a cover, and I really don't, but I really love book covers nonetheless. And very rarely do I do cover buys. There's been a couple. A Natural History of Dragons is a mixture of a cover buy with a title buy. There's been a few that I've seen the cover of and thought, okay, I want to try that out. But for the most part, I don't buy books just based off the cover. But I do like book covers because of the story that I see through them. And I don't know if this is an experience that other people have. I don't know if this is something that other people see the same way. I'm sure there are other people that view things the same way that I do, and that have the same mindset towards storytelling and towards book covers. But I do find that in general, I tend to like the older fantasy book covers a lot more than the newer fantasy book covers, and it's part of that is the story that I'm seeing told. The Eye of the World, I think that's a great fantasy book cover. The story that I see when I look into that, there's a quest story going on. What are these characters? Who are these characters? I start asking questions about myself. I start imagining the story that might be, and oftentimes it's not the story that's contained therein. Dawn of Wonder is another one where I like the cover even more now seeing what it's referencing, seeing what it's doing after having read the book and looking back at it now. But even before I read the book, I saw it, and there's some things with perspectives. There's a giant statue there. There's a young guy holding a sword, and there's a tower, a fortress in the background, and the sky, and just like these images that I know what they mean within the context of the story. But beyond that, the story that my mind creates while looking at those covers, looking at those images, that's far more important to me than the technical brilliance of an illustrator, of an artist. I want to be immersed in the world. I want to see the story that's being told. And because of those things, I feel like I have different tastes in book covers than most other readers do. And there are absolutely some beautiful book covers where I look at that book cover and I think, oh, that's really nice art, that's really well done, but I don't particularly love it or think that's a piece of art that I want on my bookshelf, or like if I could just have the art itself, that's what I'd want to hang on my wall. My mind doesn't think like that. I can appreciate the quality without enjoying it that much, and I don't know what that means about me, what that says about me. But book covers and cover art, I am constantly surprised by how much a piece of a book cover that can be really good book cover, it can be really good art, may or may not make me want to read the book, may or may not make me interested in the story being told, may or may not make me ask questions of what's going on. And so I don't really have a whole lot to say at this video. It's been a long rambly video of me saying a whole lot of nothing and a whole lot of the same thing. But I think what it ultimately comes down to is this. One more thing, and then I'll wrap it up real quick. I feel like atmosphere does play a part in the cover and in my enjoyment of a piece of art as well, as it does with the story itself. I oftentimes find myself really loving atmospheric stories. But a piece of cover art, if there is an atmosphere there and it makes me feel something, makes me feel like I am able to envision that world, able to see what's going on in that world, able to place myself in that book cover and look around and see more than just what's there on that book cover, because I understand the atmosphere of it. That's something that I think is important to my enjoyment as well. But yeah, I will close with this because I already read it once, but I want to bring it out once more. The story that the cover tells may not even be the story contained therein, but still it causes my mind to imagine. And I think that right there is what I'm trying to say with this whole video. And when I'm talking about book covers, when I'm talking about pieces of art, including the story, including music, including whatever it might be, if I'm caused to imagine, I'm going to enjoy it a whole lot more. I think that's the best answer that I can come up with at the moment for my taste in book covers. And I would love to hear thoughts. I'd love to develop my own thoughts. More than that, I'd love to have some discussions about this. But for now, that's what brought this to mind. And there was enough here that I said, okay, this might be interesting for me to sit down and talk about my thoughts on, and kind of get my thoughts out in video form. Maybe it will cause somebody else to think. Maybe somebody else will have something to interact with in this way. I would love that to be the case. I'd love to hear some more people's thoughts. I know that my perception of book covers, my perception of art, my perception of stories, of storytelling is different than other people's. And I get that, and I don't have a problem with that at all. It's just interesting to me. I don't fully understand it all, but I am enjoying the process of thinking about it, and I'm enjoying looking at book covers. I think that's fun to do. So anyways, I will leave that there. Thank you guys for watching an Erudite Adventure. We post videos every Monday and Thursday, and have our social medias linked in the description down below. We will see you guys again soon. Stay warm.